Good morning, guys, and welcome to my unboxing and review of the Master Grade F80 Gunraid. This is a 2025 Premium Bandai exclusive release that I got for $57, which does sound about right for what you get in this package, because this is essentially the mass production version of the Gundam F90, the base version of which has fluctuated in price over the years, but usually settles around in between like $45 to $50, and this I believe is going to use most of the same inner frame, retooling the exterior armor for the Gunraid itself, and coming with a set of extra optional equipment parts so you can configure the Gunraid to your liking, very similar to a lot of other grunt kits, coming with a variety of weapons and things like that, so you can, if you buy like 2 or 3 of these, you could make a full squad of them with varied loadouts. So this is a design I'm really a big fan of, and this was my second most anticipated kit that I was getting this summer, the first one being the Huckbind Boxer, which I took a look at a couple of weeks ago, and I did really love that kit, and I'm hoping that I also really love this one, considering it is the last kind of, I guess, big kit that I am taking a look at this summer before the fall semester starts, and I'm going to be cutting down my upload schedule to about 1 video a week instead of 2, because I'm going to be having less time to make these videos with classes and all that. So getting right into it, of course, very similar to the F90 itself, this is going to be in a smaller style Master Grade box, because being a late UC mobile suit, this kit is going to be significantly shorter than your typical 1/100 scale Master Grade, so it is accordingly in a smaller box. However, this box is quite thick in fitting with the standard F90. The F90 does have a kind of special place in my heart, because as some of you may know, the F90 Unit 3 was the first video I ever made for this channel, so I do have a soft spot for F90 designs and designs based off of them, like the F80 here. So of course you get some art here on the front, which I originally thought was a CG render of 2 F80 Gunraids, but it turns out, I'm pretty sure these are just edited photos of the painted build, as you'll see when I take a look at the manual. But of course, very typical p-bandai fashion, in this monochrome red here, there's going to be nothing on the sides of the box. So let's get right into it. Inside the box we will get 6 bags of runners, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but again, being a smaller Master Grade, because this is a late UC design, that is kind of to be expected. Having built the F90 Unit 3 and Unit 2, I do still think there's a very nice level of complexity here to make for a very nice build. And then of course we get our standard Master Grade style manual here, and like I said a minute ago, it's very apparent in the manual that these are like photos of the painted builds of the F80 Gunraid, edited of course to look a little more appealing for the art. But you get 2 configurations of the Gunraid here. You get a very standard configuration with swordboard and beam rifle, and then you get this other configuration here, a more heavily armed version of the Gunraid, wielding a beam bazooka, beam launcher, something like that, as well as a Gatling gun on the shoulder. And then on the back, of course, you will get your decal guide here, talking about how to apply your water slide decals, and very similar to the F90s that I took a look at, the water slides that come in this kit are going to be fairly minimal. I guess very similar to something like the AOZ Master Grade kits, where there are some decals here to accentuate detail and things like that, with some marking details, but for the most part, this is going to be a largely, not exactly anime accurate, because I don't think the F80 ever appeared in animation, but a largely lore accurate design, being fairly simple. And speaking of simple, here is our color guide down here at the bottom, consisting of only 5 different colors, most of which are fairly typical and pretty simple. This is of course going to be in full color in both English and Japanese. So inside the manual, starting with our parts list here, this looks very similar to what we've seen with previous F90 builds and things like that. There are going to be a number of parts that we aren't going to be using on the ABS frame runners from the original F90, presumably because this will be coming with a bunch of its own frame parts in the box. Of course, talking about simplified build order here with the F80 itself, then your very kind of short beam rifle, your beam bazooka here, which seems like it's a prototype for the beam launcher that the F91 got, and then your triple machine cannon on a modified version of the backpack. So of course, getting into your build here, starting with the chest unit. So this does look relatively simple compared to a lot of other Master Grades because of its small size, but I do think this will still build up in a very satisfying way that allows for plenty of articulation and posing and things like that. So then you get into your head here, which seems very typical Master Grade-y, and of course there is going to be some pretty nice layering and things like that, with the sticker for the head camera going behind a clear part to add some more depth and make it look quite nice. Then you get into your arms, which does look very similar to the F90, so it should build up fine. Then of course you get into your swappable finger style hands, assemble the upper body, and then we move on to our waist, which looks very typical Master Grade-y. Then of course you build up your back skirt here with some latches for mounting the beam bazooka when not in use. Then you get into your feet and the wires, because this kit, very similar to something like the Gundam Mark II, does use wire and a shoelace material to mimic power piping and things like that. So that will pretty much only be in the feet and will barely be visible once the kit is fully assembled, but it's cool that that kind of detail is still there. And there is going to be another bit of that shoelace material here from our power piping, I think on the back of the knee, but again, also not really all that visible once the kit is fully assembled, from what I remember. Then you finish assembling your leg in typical Master Grade fashion, build up the lower body, fully assemble, and then move on to your standard backpack here, which looks like in very thematically appropriate fashion, a simplified version of the F90's standard backpack here with only one beam saber holder. I think this kit should also be compatible with many of the mission packs that they've been releasing over the last few years. I only have the E and S type pack, and those are currently attached to my F90's Unit 2 and 3, so I won't have any to show off in this video, but I do have the mission packs D and G type in the backlog, so you'll probably see the F80 again when I decide to do a video on that. So then you get into your weapons, with the short beam rifle consisting of several sections being two halves sandwiched together, and then each section connecting onto each other to give this illusion of layering where it's not really there all that much. So we will see if that leaves a nasty seam line all across the weapon. And then your beam bazooka, which is actually two halves sandwiched together with some parts in between and a couple of parts layering on the end for the barrel. And then a couple of parts for the removable magazines, of which you will have 3. Then you get into your machine cannon, which is again two halves sandwiched together, and a couple of parts for the front and back. And then you'll build your modified backpack that the actual triple machine cannon goes onto, and I think will layer on top of your standard backpack to give this really thick, bulky, heavy-duty kind of backpack. And then you get into your shield with some pretty nice parts layering here, and then talking about holding and mounting all of your weapons and things like that. And then talking about putting the heavy-duty backpack shroud with the triple machine cannon on top of your standard backpack, talking about using the beam sabers, using the action base adapter with the hip swing mechanism, and then talking about mounting other mission packs. So yeah, here is the G type, the guards type, I think, that comes with a really large shoulder guard and an even larger beam sword. And then talking about the O type, Q type, and F type, none of which I have or plan to get in the future. A relatively simple build for a Master Grade, but I think very comparable to the other F90s, should still give a very competent, fun build at the end of the day. So inside the bags we will get 13 runners, which seems a little bit simple for a Master Grade because, again, this is a simplified version of the F90 being a grunt suit, so it does seem pretty expected for what this kit is. Of course, you'll also be getting this fairly small color correcting sticker sheet consisting of metallic green details for the eyes, head cameras, and the camera for the beam rifle, I believe. So this is pretty typical stuff that was pretty expected. Don't blame the kit for having this, or we'll fault it for it. And it will also come with this small sheet of water slide decals. Always love to see it, and this will look very nice once it's fully applied to the kit. As for the runners themselves, so these runners were printed in June of 2025, starting with runner A here, brand new for the F80 Gunraid, going to be a multi-color runner coming in 4 different colors. We get a very small yellow section down here for a number of event accent parts for all across the kit. We will be getting the red of the primary accent color of the F80 Gunraid, consisting of parts for things like the torso, the shield, parts for, I think, the skirts, parts for the feet, parts for the head, etc. We'll be getting a slightly off-white here for the main armor tone, consisting of parts for things like the skirts, both the front and the back skirt, a part for the crotch, parts for the shield, some accent parts up here, and our sitting pilot figure. And then we'll be getting clear green up here for camera details for the head. Runners B1 and B2, B2 being a copy of this section down here in a very purple gray. So we've seen this kind of purple gray for frame details and things like that before, but normally it isn't this purple. This is a little bit more saturated than it normally is. For parts for our beam bazooka, as well as the 3 magazines for the beam bazooka. And I forgot to mention those runners were from the F90 mission pack, I think A. We'll be getting runners C1 and C2 with this large center section shared between them in off-white for the rest of our off-white armor parts for the F80 Gunraid here, hitting a number of armor parts for things like the feet, legs, arms, head, and our beam saber here. Runner D in the same purple gray as runners B1 and B2 for a number of frame parts from the Gundam F90. This runner is going to have a number of frame parts for things like our waist, our action base adapter, inner frame parts for the skirts, all of our hand option parts here, and parts for the backpack. 2 of runner E from the original F90 and a purple gray ABS, going to contain a number of different frame parts for all across the kit for things like the inner frames of the arms, shoulders, legs, feet, etc. Runner F1 and a purple gray ABS, going to contain a number of other frame parts for this kit for things like the torso and I think the crotch. But this will also contain some parts for our beam rifle and the inner frame part for our shield. Oh yeah, that was also for the original F90. We will be getting runners G1 and G2 here for new frame parts for the F80 Gunraid, for parts for things like the, I think the ankle armor, parts for the feet, parts for our backpack, presumably the new backpack shroud, but I'm not exactly sure, some thruster parts, etc., as well as parts for our skirts over here. Runner H here in a purple gray ABS is going to contain Some more inner frame parts for our shield. I think this is either the triple machine cannon or the beam bazooka. I don't remember exactly which. Parts for our heavy duty backpack, shroud, etc. And last but certainly not least, we will be getting the venerable runner SB13 here for a set of 1/144th scale beam saber effect parts in clear blue. So because the F80 is both a grunt suit, which sometimes have shorter beam saber effect parts to show that they are lower power than the super prototypes that we are accustomed to seeing in like protagonist roles and things like that, and this being a smaller master grade than your typical master grade, this is going to be using a shorter style of beam effect part for the 1/100 scale. And I did forget to mention it earlier, but of course we will be getting this shoelace material and this short wire for replicating power piping details in the feet and the backs of the knees. So we'll be seeing that after the build. So with all that out of the way, I will see you after the build. All right. Welcome back. Here's the Master Grade F80 Gunraid snap built panel, lined, decaled up with the included water slide decals, and top coated using Mr. Hobby Premium Flat Top Coat. And this was a really fun build. I was really looking forward to this kit, and I'm happy to say that my expectations were fully met, and this is a really wonderful kit to work with. So, getting right into the build, of course, if you've built any of the F90 kits before, this is going to be incredibly similar to those. That is to say, this isn't going to be comparable to something like, say, the two IBO Master Grades in terms of the frame, or even the Master Grade RX-78 2.0 frame. So, if you haven't built the F90, the closest point of comparison I would say exists for the frame, at least, is going to be the base frame for the Master Grade Wing Gundams. So something like the Sandrock or Shenlong is going to be pretty close to what you get with this kit. So it's simplified, it's ABS, but it does do the job fine, especially given this kit's small stature and lack of, I guess, any super like extreme geometry or anything very heavy mounted on the kit. So the frame does this job holding up the kit very well. There are no real stability issues on this kit. However, the armor is a little bit of a different story. There is one kind of major, I guess, I don't really know if it's a fit issue or a construction issue that I ran into building this kit, but it's going to be on the two large antennas on the sides of the head. For whatever reason, the connection going from the antenna into the head was really tight for me, so it was very hard to actually properly get it into the head without fear of like bending, breaking, or otherwise warping the antennas. Mine was bent a little bit. I managed to get it back into place, but it's a very tight and difficult connection to actually get the antenna into the head in my experience. But apart from that, the armor all layers on really nicely in a way comparable to the base F90. Again, that's going to be the kit closest to this one, so there's plenty of decent parts layering, plenty of decent parts separation all across this kit. Great color separation across the board, and this kit really does still feel like a Master Grade despite its short stature and slightly simplified nature compared to a lot of other Master Grades. In addition, the one other fit issue I do want to bring up is going to be on the back skirt for the small yellow accent part that goes on the side of the back skirt. I don't know what it was. One of them just kept falling out of the back skirt for me every time I was handling the kit. It's actually missing right now. I just noticed it, so after this section I will stop and look for it before I move on to aesthetics. But that is just something I want to bring up, that one of the yellow vent accent parts on the back skirt did tend to fall out a lot more easily than the other one. So because it's only one part instead of both of them, I'm going to assume that it's a specific issue on my end, whether or not I oversanded it when I was filing off the nub marks or something like that, but I don't think that's an issue with this design in general. And the other thing I want to talk about really quickly is going to be the use of the shoelace material to emulate the power piping in the kit. I'll show it off in the aesthetics section, but it's fairly minimal in this kit and very easy to work with. You could even probably omit the power piping in the feet if you don't want to deal with it, just because it's so barely noticeable when this kit is fully assembled. Like, you can't really see it unless you're specifically looking underneath the kit at a very specific angle to try and look for it. Otherwise, it's really not noticeable at all. The power piping in the back of the feet going into the ankle, that is noticeable, so that one I would say you really can't omit if you're not comfortable with working with it, but for how little is used in this kit, I think the shoelace material is perfectly fine and not really that big a source of inconvenience. So yeah, the build, while slightly more simple than your typical Master Grade, is still quite nice and does the job perfectly for what this kit is, which is a simplified grunt version of the Gundam F90. So getting into aesthetics now, I did manage to find the yellow piece on the back skirt on the floor that had fallen off while I was handling the kit, but this kit does look really great, and I do absolutely love how this thing looks. But of course, before I get into my opinions on the design, I will talk about color accuracy first. So starting with the color correcting stickers. So all of these are going to be pretty understandable metallic green camera details. That is a color correcting sticker on most Master Grades, so that's not really something I will fault for this kit. So So sticker 1 is of course going to be the eye details here. It's going to be underneath a clear visor piece, which leads to some really nice depth effects on this kit where you can make out the outline of the eyes underneath the clear part, and that looks really good. In addition, the frame part underneath that color correcting sticker does have the eye details and everything molded in. So if you want, you can just paint it in metallic green instead of using the color correcting sticker. There's a bunch of really nice detailing on the inside and everything like that. So that should not really be an issue of missing like detail if you decide to omit the sticker. Sticker 2 is going to be in the head here. Very similar story where the stickers underneath a clear green piece to give a really nice illusion of depth. And once again, the detail is going to be molded on this red part that the sticker goes onto. So again, that really isn't an issue of missing detail if you decide to paint it in yourself. Sticker 3 is going to be this large rear head camera sticker on the back of the head. No clear piece underneath that or anything, or any illusion of depth or anything like that. So that's a pretty normal metallic green camera sticker as far as master grades go. And sticker 4 is going to be on the F70 type backpack here on the end of the machine cannon barrel, this really tiny green square at the tip of the barrel. Apart from that, this kit is essentially entirely color accurate, as you might expect from a modern master grade, which is really nice to see. Some details like the triangle on the backpack is applied by a water slide decal, but even on the painted build of this kit on the p-bandai website and on the manual and everything does not have that in full color. So I think that's an extra additional bit of detail provided like in this kit rather than what is supposed to be like, I guess, line art accurate for the F80 Gunraid. So as for my opinions on this design, I absolutely adore this thing. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it might be because the F90 has a very like special place in my heart because, as you may know, the F90 Unit 3 was the first kit I ever reviewed on this channel. So it does have a little bit of sentimentality to me, but I still do really like how this thing looks, especially in the head. As you may know, I am a kind of sucker for Federation visor suits, and being made by SNRI, this is in fact a Federation suit with a visor, so I do really like how it looks. In addition to the aesthetic design language of this kit really nailing what it's going for in terms of having a very clear lineage being able to be traced back to the F90, as you can see in the overall proportions in the bulbous chest and especially in the lower body. This very much looks like a slightly simplified F90, but still unique enough to do its own thing, with things like a little bit of extra bulk in the back of the leg to give it a more bulbous shape, the reworked head that looks really nice, and of course the mostly white with red accented color scheme here. And I do absolutely really love how this thing looks, and there's plenty of detail all over the kit. You can see like in terms of like the surface detail and things like the legs here, all these really nice panel lines to represent all the detailing on the legs. You see it in the chest here with all, again, some more really nice detailing, tons of geometric detail in the forearms and things like that with this really bulky, I guess, like bracer bit that looks like it's clipped onto the lower forearm. Of course, it all kind of layers together really nicely when you're building the kit. All of it just comes together to make this really like pleasant to look at model kit that really does feel like it represents the design perfectly in the master grade, and it looks great. So for a quick size comparison, here is the master grade F80 Gunraid next to a standard sized high grade being the high grade Blue Destiny Unit 1, and a standard sized master grade being the master grade Gem Sniper 2 White Dingo team. So as you can see, the F80 Gunraid is in very typical late UC mobile suit fashion, going to stand in between your standard high grade and your standard master grade, being in universe, I think, is either 14.5 or 15 meters tall or something like that, so it is relatively short. So this will take up less space on your shelf than your typical master grade, but it may take up more depth-wise space depending on the loadout you decide to give it, which we'll talk about in the accessory section in a moment. And of course, for a quick visual comparison, here's the F80 Gunraid next to, well, one of the suits it is based on, the F90 Unit 2 here in its purple rollout colors. I still have it equipped with the Type S mission pack from when I did my initial review on that kit. So apart from the extra cannons and things on this kit, you can really see the lineage from the F80 to the F90, particularly in the legs. You can see very similar leg structures there, nearly identical feet, but the ankle armor is reworked and the F80 is bulked up in the right spots to, again, help it stand out from the suit that it is based on. In addition, you can see in the general proportions and in the bulbousness of the torso, the F80 still, again, does trace a lot back to the F90, although the chest armor is enhanced on the F80, leading to a slightly more bulky shape here with modified chest vents and a much bulkier front section of the chest. And of course, you see some reworked proportions in other areas, like the shoulders being slightly slimmer, and while you can't really see the arms inside of the Type S mission pack there, the F80's forearm armor is significantly bulked up compared to the F90's there. So yeah, again, the F80 does a really great job of having this design language where it can very clearly trace its, I guess, mobile suit lineage back to the F90, but is unique enough and doing its own thing enough to be able to stand out on its own on the shelf. So for your accessories, here is the F80 Gunraid with everything it comes with. As you can see, this is a very complete accessory suite that has almost everything you would want or expect this kit to have. But before we get into that really quickly, because I just realized I forgot to talk about it in the aesthetics section, of course, in addition to the very nice color separation on the feet there, talking about the visibility of the power piping in the feet sections here. The power piping is going to be wrapping around this top section of the foot. So I don't know how well you can see that, but kind of in between the red part of the foot and the ankle armor there, you can very vaguely make out the power piping in there. So like I was saying, it's nearly impossible to see once the kit is fully built up unless you're holding it at a very specific angle and very much looking for it. So again, that is something you can't omit. But the other power piping is going to be here in the back of the feet going up into the ankle and the lower leg. So that is very visible and that you are not going to be able to omit if you're not comfortable working with the shoelace material for the power piping. But getting to accessories, as per usual, I will start with your hand option parts. So this kit is going to come with the usual, again, very similar to the Wingmaster grades, swappable finger style hands with the thumb on a ball joint, a point of articulation in the middle. So you will of course be getting the 2 closed fists I have on the kit right now. You will be getting these 2 standard holding hands for using either the beam sabers, although this kit is only supposed to have 1 beam saber at a time unless you're using certain mission packs, or for gripping onto the handle of the shield over there. And of course you will be getting a trigger finger hand, 1 for each side, so you can wield the beam rifle or the beam bazooka with either arm. So that is all the hand option parts. Unfortunately, no open expressive hands, which is something I really feel like every master grade should have. You are missing out on some posing potential of this kit by not having those open expressive hand parts. For your adapters, you will of course be getting this standard action base adapter, not really much to say, it does the part fine. To put it on, you are going to have to move the skirt armor down and utilize the hip swing gimmick of the kit to open up the track for the adapter to slide into, and then once it's on there and you put the legs back without the hip swing, it is locked in there very securely, so that is nice to see. And for your other adapters here, you will get these 2 forearm adapter parts here. So this is for compatibility with mission packs, just like how the F90 Unit 3 came with a backpack adapter because it had a very, I guess, unorthodox backpack for the F90, so it came with a standard backpack and a standard backpack adapter to use it with. This, because the forearm armor is very different from the base F90, you will have these 2 adapters here to give it the hard points to equip mission packs onto. So I will say now, since I'm already talking about it, this kit does have full compatibility with every mission pack for the F90. So if this kit ever gets reprinted or anything, and you want to spice up your, I guess, F90 mission pack display, if you have one of those, because those seem to be massive money printers for Bandai, you can replace some of your F90s with these. Although, granted, these are going to be a bit more expensive than the F90, especially with the price hikes going on this year, so expect to find this kit for over $60 if they ever reprint it in the future. I am planning to display this kit with the G-type mission pack in the future, the one with the giant shoulder shield and beam sword. I think that'll look really nice with this kit, so you'll see that in the future. For your melee options, of course, you will get 2 beam sabers. One I have on the kit now in the standard F90 style backpack, although with only 1 beam saber holder. And we'll get a second beam saber here, and these are a little bit longer than, proportionally than your typical beam sabers. Normally for a kit like this, you expect it to be a little bit shorter to match with the kit's hand size, but these longer style beam sabers do give it a little bit more of a striking presence when it's doing a melee strike, which you'll see in the posing section. And if you have the F70 type backpack there equipped instead, of course you can equip the beam saber on the opposite side of the backpack. And for use with your beam sabers, you will get these 2 beam saber effect parts in clear blue, which look really nice. You'll see these in the posing section. These are actually the same size beam saber effect parts that are included with most standard UC high grade kits. To match with the kit's shorter stature, you will of course have these shorter beam saber effect parts. For your main handheld ranged weapon, you will get this short style beam rifle here, as opposed to the standard F90's beam rifle, which you do have all the parts to make in the box. So if you want to configure it with the F90's standard beam rifle, you can do that, but I have it with the short beam rifle here that the instruction manual tells you to make, which I do think looks really nice and looks really great in more nimble mobile poses that this kit's short stature really lends itself to. So you'll see that in the posing section. No real articulation in this kit, nice color separation for the scope there. Apart from that, not really much to say. For your defensive option, you will get this shield here, which is really visually striking with the surface detail here and the giant 80 decal on the middle of the shield. So this looks really great. Tons of really nice detail on the inside of the frame there. A secondary handle to grip here if you want to pose the F90 firing off the 4-tube missile pod in the bottom of the shield there. So you'll see that in the posing section. The shield looks really great. A little bit, I guess, proportionally chunky. It's much thicker than I was expecting a shield like this to be, which looks a tiny bit awkward in certain poses, but I think it is also unique enough to, again, help the F80 stand out on your shelf. For your heavy ordnance, then, you will get this beam bazooka here, which is the same beam bazooka seen in the mission pack A-type. So, of course, you will have these 2 latches here that will flip out if you want to mount it on the back skirt of the F80 over there. The handle can flip down for better articulation. These like little bits on the front here do not open up, unlike the beam launcher on the F91, and the E-pack here on the back is removable and you get 2 spares. So tons of really nice articulation on this weapon, and you'll see that in the posing section. For the 2 spare magazines here, you can mount it onto the hard points on the side skirt. If you remove this little block of armor here, you expose the hard points there to mount the spare magazines. Again, you'll see that in the posing section. So really nice to see that this kit comes with storage for extra magazines. That isn't always necessarily the case on many master grade kits. And then of course you get what I think is the most interesting accessory for this kit, which is of course going to be the backpack for the F70 Cannon Gundam, which I don't think we ever got a master grade of, so maybe that will be another p-bandai release that they have in the future. But this backpack really helps beef up the F80 silhouette, and if you decide to get multiple of these to get a squad of them, you can have like the 3rd heavy unit with this backpack in the back to help it stand out. The machine cannon here looks really cool and is sufficiently long enough to actually look good being used as the primary weapon of an attack, or to act as a supplementary secondary weapon. There's a ton of articulation on this accessory, so of course, the cannon here can move up and down as necessary and can swivel out and in. In certain poses, swiveling it in will clash with the head and pose a risk of breaking the antennas, which is a little bit of a shame, but swiveling it out does look surprisingly good if you're having it as a secondary weapon firing alongside the F80 if it's gunning off to the side, which you'll see in the posing section. So tons of really nice articulation here. And for the beam saber holder on the other side, it can swivel out and it is kind of hard to articulate without a beam saber in the slot, but it can swivel in and out to show the F80 actually reaching in and grabbing the beam saber off the rack, which you'll see in the posing section, and that looks really nice. So really great accessory here, and really glad that it was included. So a full, complete accessory spread for the F80. Really the only things that's missing in my opinion are open expressive hand parts and a standing pilot figure, but that seems to be a fairly common omission with many, especially p-bandai master grades these days, so not something I'm going to particularly fault this kit for, just a little bit of a disappointment that it wasn't included in my opinion. So getting into articulation then, this is going to be using largely the same frame as the F90, so if you're familiar with that kit, you can probably skip this section because the articulation is going to be largely the same. So in the head then, for an upward look, you can get a really nice upward look there. For a downward look, it can look down almost into its own chest. You get some pretty decent side to side tilt, and you can fully 360 the head about the ball joint. In addition, these head antennas here can swivel out and in a tiny bit. Just be careful not to do it too far, otherwise you do pose a risk of bending, warping, or breaking the head antennas there. In the shoulders then, the joint can slide out to facilitate a shoulder swing of about 45 degrees, which is fairly typical for a master grade. You get a minor backward swing. Shoulder armor can rotate independently of the actual arm to facilitate an almost 135-degree raise. You would get full rotation in the upper bicep were it not for the shoulder armor colliding with this thick, I think, thruster section on the outside of the upper bicep there, which makes it nice that they do include a second point of rotation here in the forearm, which can fully 360. A double bend in the elbow will give you a 135-degree bend before the very thick forearm armor will collide with the shoulder, and the wrist is on a ball joint, which will do ball joint things. And of course the thumb is also on a ball joint to allow for some articulation there. In the torso then, for a forward ab crunch, you get a moderate forward ab crunch before the rather thick torso armor there will collide with the crotch armor, and you get a minor backwards ab crunch, nothing too crazy. You will get some side to side tilt, and you can fully 360 the torso about the peg going into the waist. The cockpit hatch can of course open, although it's a little difficult to get to reveal your sitting Federation pilot figure in there. It's very hard to see him because he's very recessed in there. You can really only see his legs. In addition, the cockpit is in a nice clear green color, although I'm not exactly sure what purpose it serves because you can't see it at all, and unlike the F90 2.0, there's no light pass-through gimmick or anything like that, so not really sure why it's in clear green, probably just for lore reasons, but it is there. In the waist then, of course, the front skirts can fold down, but that's mostly to unlock the hip swing gimmick for the action base adapter to slide onto that rail on the bottom of the kit that you can see there, but there is a hip swing gimmick there to enhance some leg articulation in certain cases. Your skirt armor can rotate up 90 degrees on separate ball joints. Your side skirts can rotate up under 45 degrees, maybe 30 degrees, and your back skirt is going to be fixed in place. These latches here can open up to reveal the points to plug in to mount the beam bazooka, although this top latch here does tend to pop out really easily, so just be careful with that. So that can open up and you can plug in your beam bazooka there to mount on the back skirt when not in use, which you'll see in the posing section. Oh, I almost forgot, for the backpack, these thrusters are going to be on separate ball joints, which will do ball joint things, and the U-saber holder here can flip in and out as necessary. And you do get extra parts to make the standard F90 backpack with the 2 beam saber holders, but again, for the F80, I built the standard one that the manual says to build, which only has the 1 beam saber holder. For your kicks then, you will get just about 90 degrees forward, about 90 degrees to the side, and a very minor, maybe 30-degree backwards kick. If you activate the hip swing mechanism forward, you can get a slightly better, almost 45-degree back kick, but again, it's fairly minor, which is a little bit disappointing for this kit. You can 360 the leg in the upper thigh. A full double bend here will give you about a 135-degree bend before the very thick lower leg will collide with the thigh. Your ankle armor can swivel a little bit independently of the foot, but the articulation is fairly minor, and there's no real reason to articulate it independently of the foot. There is no heel-toe separation, unfortunately. For overall toe dips, you get a moderate toe dip, a really nice overall toe raise, which will help this kit look really natural in your running and gunning pose. You will get about a 45-degree tilt to either side, and you can of course rotate it 360 degrees about the peg. So overall articulation on the F80 is going to be fairly solid across the board, with really the only extremely disappointing part being the lack of back kick articulation. So let's see the articulation in action in some poses. So getting the master grade F80 Gunraid into a spin, starting with the usual running and gunning pose, and this kit, as you might expect, does look really good in these kind of nimble mobile poses here. And the ability to actually bend the forward leg so far with the excellent ankle articulation and still remain balanced while throwing the legs back and everything like that does help this kit actually look a lot more natural in these kinds of poses than a lot of other kits do. Many do fail to look very dynamic or natural in these poses because of poor ankle articulation, meaning that the forward leg needs to be pretty much straight down. For this kit, the ability to bend the knee to such a extreme degree while still enabling the kit to look okay firing off to the side is really impressive, and does show off how well balanced this kit is and how stable it is in most poses that you would want to have it in. So unfortunately, with how great the balance of this kit is and how easy it is to get it into a natural pose like this is far from the best way to pose this kit. While this kit does look good in motion, it's best in motion in the air, as you might expect from the small, more nimble design of the late UC suits. Having a suit like this on the ground does seem a little bit awkward and not really conducive to its strengths, so really I would rather have this kit in a pose in the air flying around. However, the short beam rifle does actually look really great in this kind of pose. Again, a small weapon like this is most conducive to being displayed while the kit is in some sort of agility or nimbleness exaggerating pose to show the lightweight of the weapon and ease of handling. So that weapon does look quite good here, and the shield in the off arm really helps exaggerate these motions and also helps bulk up the kit where it would otherwise look quite small and unimpressive on your shelf. So while this kind of pose isn't necessarily the greatest thing for this kit, there are aspects of it that do really work well for this kit and that work in this kit's best poses in the air. So to cover all my bases, here's the F80 Gunraid crouching, firing the beam bazooka over the shoulder, while also firing the missile pod in the bottom of the shield at a target, and this shows off a couple of things. One, this kit, again, doesn't really look that great on the ground. While it can pull off this crouching pose quite naturally, it's very well balanced while doing so, and it looks fine in this kind of pose. A lot of kits do struggle to get the back leg to look natural, and struggle to get the front leg either up or out enough with decent enough ankle movement to actually get the feet flat on the ground and look okay. This kit can do both, but again, not really most conducive to this kit's strengths. Being a smaller, more nimble kit, it looks its best in motion in the air. But the beam bazooka here actually really does look quite nice in this kind of pose here over the shoulder. Well, you can also fire it tucked underneath the arm and it looks okay there. I think this kind of pose here, emphasizing the weapon's heft needing to be rested and balanced on the shoulder while firing, is best for it. And the shield looks okay. I think with how far it juts out from the arm naturally, it does look at its best with the hand actually gripping the handle to hold on to and guide the shield in whatever motion you want it to do. So this kind of pose here is most conducive with what the shield is best at, but it also looks really great with the hand gripping the handle, holding it like kind of in front of the chest in a defensive pose. So while this pose isn't really what I would consider to be that good for the F80 Gunraid, it is an example of the kit's strengths in articulation and balance, and shows off what its arsenal is capable of. So getting the kit into the air, here it is with the torso twisted, charging forward with the shield in front of it, with the beam saber off to the side about to slash someone, with the F70 Cannon Gundam's backpack mounted onto this kit to bulk it up quite nicely, and having the beam bazooka mounted on the back skirt there. So this really shows up what this kit is capable of, being a kind of a modular grunt suit, as you might expect from something based on the F90. Being so modular, this kit really does have so many things it can do, and so many ways to pose it, like kind of in the air, in motion, doing interesting things with its very varied arsenal. So even in a basic melee pose like this, it still looks quite good. Again, showing off the motion and speed of this kit, showing off, I guess, the durability of the shield by using it as a defensive option like this, gripping it with the handle to kind of brace it and give it a stronger, more defensive stance, I guess, as it charges forward, protecting itself. Now, originally, I was going to pose the machine cannon on the F70 backpack, tilted over the shoulder, firing forward in front of it, but with the torso tilted like this, you would need to swivel the machine cannon inward, and that would collide with the F80's antennas on the sides of the head. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said swiveling the machine cannon inward might be a little bit awkward or pose a bit of a break risk, depending on how you're posing your kit. This is what I was talking about. Swiveling the cannon into fire in front of it would mean that it would be colliding with the head antennas, either tilting the head or otherwise putting it at risk of breaking the antennas. So unfortunately, this kit, while the articulation is quite excellent for the most part, not exactly the best in the world, and isn't capable of doing something like this with the torso straight forward, because the shoulder swing is slightly lacking for that. But for most other situations, the articulation on this kit is more than enough to pull off any of the poses you would want, and for something like this, the inability to have the machine cannon firing forward is a very minor gripe, and even without it, this is still a pretty excellent pose that I might consider having this kit on the shelf. So here is the F80 Gunraid in the promo pose here, with the machine cannon backpack firing forward, the beam bazooka underneath the armpit firing forward, and it's reaching with its offhand into the backpack to grip the beam saber. So this is showing off what this kit is capable of. It can do pretty much anything you would want it to, besides, well, what I was talking about the last pose, having the machine cannon swivel inward to fire, but again, that's a very minor thing it's not capable of. So I'll leave this pose up spinning for a little bit while I talk about the conclusion. So in conclusion, the F80 Gunraid is a simple yet extremely effective kit that really does its design justice on the Master Grade, being based on the F90 and really showing that while its lineage can very clearly be traced back to the F90, it really stands out and does its own thing quite well aesthetically to really give it a little bit of presence and help it stand out where otherwise it may not, given its small stature and things like that. So the build for this kit is, again, in keeping in line with this kit in general, simple yet effective. The frame is extremely similar to the base F90, so if you built that, you know exactly what to expect, being simpler than a typical Master Grade or like a Master Grade ARC-72 2.0 frame that a ton of kits are based on. This frame is simpler than those kits, being most similar to the Wing Master Grades. Something like the Sandrock or Shenlong are what this kit's frame is closest to, and it does feel a little bit dated being a full ABS frame, but it still does a decent job holding this kit up and is perfectly stable with minimal fit issues for the frame. In terms of the armor then, there are a couple of fit issues, namely the antennas on the sides of the head. The connection is extremely tight and is hard to actually get mounted into the head without bending or warping the antennas in some way, so that's something to be very careful of while you're building this kit. And in addition, one of the small yellow accent parts in the back skirt did keep falling off for me, but I think because it's only the one detail and it wasn't consistent across these small yellow details across the kit, I think that might be a specific issue with my kit or how I cleaned up the nub marks or maybe over sanded it or something, but I'm not really going to fault that for this kit. Apart from that, this kit is perfectly stable with minimal fit issues apart from those head antennas that I was talking about earlier. The armor layers on incredibly nicely to give a very geometrically varied set of armor that's very nicely part separated, and it is a joy to build. In terms of aesthetics then, this kit does an excellent job doing justice to the F80's design. Like I've said a few times in this video, it can very clearly have its lineage traced back to the F90, with the legs being very similar to that kit, with the feet being nearly identical, with the overall proportions being very similar while doing its own thing with the color scheme, with the extra bulked up torso with additional armor in the chest, and with a completely reworked head that does look extremely pleasant in my opinion, with the very typical Federation grunt suit visor over the dual eye sensors. That looks really quite excellent. In addition, color accuracy is essentially perfect for this kit, with no painting required on your part, and the few color correcting stickers provided are for very understandable details that are normally not color accurate on most Master Grades, being the metallic green camera stickers on the head and the F70 Cannon Gundam's backpack. Apart from that, no painting needs to be done on your part, and this kit looks great out of box with decals and a bit of top coat, and it really does feel like a premium modern Master Grade, which is great. In terms of accessories then, this is where this kit really shines, having a very varied loadout, meaning that being a grunt suit, you can pick up maybe 2 or 3 of these, make a full squad of them, and you are able to have them all wielding different loadouts to make them aesthetically varied on your shelf, with the addition of the F70 Cannon Gundam's backpack to give it more of a heavy weapons lean if you wanted to do that. You can keep it very light and typical with sword, board, and beam rifle, or you can give it some heavy ordnance with the beam bazooka. You can have most loadouts you would want to with this kit, in addition to full compatibility with the F90's mission packs, meaning that you can have a ton of variations of this kit on your shelf if you want to do that. The manual shows off equipping this kit with the, I think, mission packs G-type, O-type, Q-type, and K-type, I think. Again, I don't remember exactly all the letters, but this kit is compatible with all of them, even including 4-arm hardpoint adapters to give this kit all the same hardpoints as the F90. Really, the only things missing from this kit on an accessory side is going to be the open expressive fingers that you might expect with most modern master grades, and a standing pilot figure to give this kit a sense of scale on your shelf. In terms of articulation, then, this kit also really does shine here, with excellent articulation across the board, being able to pull off most poses you would want for this kit. Really, the only places where it feels a little bit lackluster are going to be in back kicks with a very poor articulation there, but it is made up for in terms of torso articulation and ankle articulation, meaning that while you can't throw the leg that far backwards, you can't throw everything else forward enough that it doesn't really matter, and relatively speaking, it is much more backwards compared to the rest of the kit that you don't really even notice that it's missing some back kick articulation. The only other slight disappointment is going to be in the shoulder swing with the very thick torso armor, meaning that your shoulder swing is going to be, while about average, still a bit limiting in certain melee poses. So would I recommend this kit? Absolutely. I absolutely adore the design of this kit, so I may be a little bit biased, but I think it's safe to say that for all of the new kits I've built in 2025, this is my favorite kit that's released this year. Simple, yet incredibly effective, with a very, I guess, unique design that I really wasn't expecting to be made into a master grade, but it looks fantastic, poses fantastic, includes nearly everything you would want it to, and builds up in a really nice, pleasant way. With such a versatility of posing, and such perfect color accuracy and things like that, I think there's something in this kit for everyone to love, unless you absolutely hate like the scale of late UC designs, or if you really don't like the design language of the F90 in general. If you don't absolutely hate this design, I would say pick it up if you can if it gets reprinted. I think this is an absolutely fantastic master grade. So that was my review of the master grade F80 Gunraid. What do you think of this kit? I absolutely adored it. I don't know if that's a sentiment shared by everyone, but I really do love this kit, and it's my favorite kit that I've built that's come out this year, and I don't expect it to be dethroned by the end of the year. But if you like videos like these, make sure to sub the notification bell so you don't miss future uploads. If you like this video, give it a like, and I'll see you next time with my review of the high grade Leo S. I'll see you then.